Welcome to Life on Maui. I'm your host, Stephen Freid. My guest for today is Craig Collins, and we have been Facebook friends for the past 2 years, corresponding, and he said when he comes to Maui, he wants to be on the Life on Maui show. So we just met on the beach a few days ago. He's a great guy, and he has a teaching method for literacy that he did with his brother called Yes, You Can Read Now. That is nothing short of miraculous. It can in a very short time increase somebody's reading skills exponentially. Also, we're going to weave into this story that for 40 years he was a detective, and he's had some really incredible near-death experiences, and this all goes into his abilities to read people, to be intuitive, and great at what he does. So, welcome to the show, Craig.
Thank you, Steve. It's wonderful to be here on Life on Maui.
Absolutely, yeah. We've been planning this. So, just give an overview of Yes, You Can Read Now.
Well, we call it the Universal Reading Method, and it's a reading method that we teach in 2.5 hours. And each student that comes to us often comes to us with a 4th grade reading level. And within 2.5 hours, they're reading from a list of 333 words that are multi-syllable words that are from the GED. And so it's quite miraculous, and I'm very, very proud to have it flow through me.
This is amazing. So, how did this come about? I know that this had to do with your brother and his own learning impediment, his own reading impediment, and it's progressed from there. How did this happen? How did this occur?
Well, I have an older brother. He's 5 years older than I. I probably shouldn't have said that because then I have to tell you how old I am. But anyway, he's 5 years older than I am. Anyway, his name is Doug Collins, and I wasn't aware of it when I was growing up, but he couldn't read. And he wasn't able to read until he was 30 years old. And for that 30 years, he actually thought there was something wrong with his brain, that we used the word back then, retarded. He thought he was retarded, but no one was telling him. And so when he was 30 years old, he was actually in law school, had gone and graduated from a college, and a law professor introduced him to the idea of concepts and said, you put large bodies of information in concepts, and in doing so, you could be able to remember all that information. And so he went home and he had an epiphany. Literally epiphany. The epiphanies, I even researched them. They had to do with, like the elements chart. When you were in school and you saw the elements chart, well, the person was a Russian scientist, and he just came out of the sky.
Something comes in and just becomes clear.
Yes, and he had that clarity. And then he returned to school, and law school, and he graduated from his class at the top of the class.
I just got to ask you, because I've heard this story once before from you. How did he even make it through school not being able to read? How did that happen?
Well, when you're younger, then my mom and dad did a lot of his homework, and and then he was going to a school where if you wore nice clothes and you were quiet and put your hands on the desk and you didn't cause too much trouble, then they gave you good grades, because it was a school where there were a lot of people that were not like that. So he worked his way through that and got very, very good grades because of that, and with my parents' help. And then he went off to UCSB, to the University of California in Santa Barbara, and when he got there, he realized he couldn't memorize everything, and he didn't have my parents there to do his homework, and he was overwhelmed.
And just give some figures. I mean, literacy is a big problem. It's not a small issue. It's a big problem. What are the figures? It's something close to 1/4 of the population.
Well, how it works out, Steve, is that there are 337 million people, and we could kind of keep clicking that on as we're talking. And of those 337 million people
that are population of our country,
the population of the United States, 90 million adults are illiterate, and even the past statistics on voting came out that 90 million adults did not vote. And so there's 90 million adults, and then I was spending some time with a community college dean, and she expressed to me that 51% of the kids coming out of high school right now are coming out at a 4th grade level. So if you're someone that feels self-conscious about your reading challenges, well, you're part of a big population of people, at least in the United States, and UK, 25 million.
Yeah, it's really good to be compassionate with yourself, because when there's something that's an impediment like that, you can start to feel bad about yourself. But now with what you're offering, and soon you're going to streamline this so it becomes much more widely available. This is something, tell people in how short of a time with this method. Tell people a little bit about the process and how in such a short time it can be, just your reading level can just shoot up.
Well, it's pretty amazing. We teach 7 concepts, and that's a key. You know, for instance, my phone number is 858-945-5007. And then if you're out there, you're going to go, oh, let me write that down, and could you tell me again? But if I say my phone number is 945-5007, you can put that in your phone immediately, because it's 7 concepts. So my brother developed, without knowing that it was significant, 7 concepts to reading, and that they all build upon each other. So the first concept starts, and then the second one leads into that one, and the third one, and they keep on going. Now, when I first was exposed to it, and I was actually teaching students to read, I had no idea why it worked. It just did. It was a phenomenon, and I don't like phenomenons. I want to know, why does this work? So I met this neuroscientist, Barry Schwartz, and he listened to what I said and what we were doing, and he said, of course. And so it's called 5 + 2 - 2. It's a neuroscience study that was done that showed that people learn 7. And if you go to 8, it'll dump, just like my phone number did when you were trying to remember all 10. So it's a method that it keeps on progressing, and it takes 2.5 hours for us to teach it. But in that 2.5 hours, like the first about 56 minutes, the person is learning from a video. And this is what's most amazing right now. I'm no longer teaching it. I created something that's better than I am, and better than my brother is, because we have graphics and we have pop-outs, and it's very exciting to be able to have this video, because obviously we can reach numbers of people this way, because anybody that wants to will be able to go on the screen and on the web and be able to pull it up and learn to read.
And another thing, just because I'm just coming back from Southeast Asia, is there's English as a second language being taught around the world. So how does this can work in that respect as well, right? Not just in our country, but around the world.
Anywhere. I've taught people that were from Germany. I've taught people from Switzerland who spoke French. I've taught people from France. I taught people with different accents in Scotland and Ireland, England. I've taught people. Actually, it was interesting. I was in Montreal, and I taught someone from China. And she had been trying to study English for a long time, and within the 2.5 hours, she was like fluent in speaking as well as being able to read, and she was delighted.
No, it's really something. So, does it have something to do with the 2 areas, the left and right brain, or how does it work?
Well, from what Barry Schwartz has explained to us, so I don't want to be held to it, but right now we're doing a study at UCSD, and we'll be doing fMRI brain scans on each student that he teaches, and so it'll be able to actually pinpoint and show the parts of the brain. But at this point, what Barry has expressed to me is that everyone reads from the cerebral cortex, that front part of their brain, and we all have this one part of their brain that's pretty much overworking and doing too much work. And so when we teach our reading method, what happens is that we have these 7 concepts, and when we get to this part in the middle where we're doing the blends, it's like a neural pathway. Like, you know, you think about the fireworks, the 4th of July, seeking a place to go, and they find what we call the Broca's part of the brain. And so it goes to this part of the brain, and when it does, it's like Pac-Man, you know, and the cerebral cortex is going, right? Well, then as it hits that other part of the brain, it goes, oh, and it goes, pom, 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 pom. And then the Broca's goes, pom, 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 pom. And then the occipital part of the brain goes, pom, 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 pom. And it goes in a triangle. And everything slows down. So when they do the fMRI scan, instead of it getting lots of more motion and a lot more light going on, it's all calm. And the person who's maybe has ADHD or is PTSD or dyslexic, they all, it starts to make sense, and it comes to them easily, very easily. I mean, they're amazed, absolutely amazed.
So your background, this is interesting. So you were a detective for 40 years.
Correct.
And so you...
I started when I was 2 years old, by the way.
Well, okay.
I'm teasing because I don't want to be any older than 42, of course.
Gotcha. So you have the kind of mind, naturally, that puts things together.
Correct.
So talk about your detective experience a little bit. Maybe tell a couple interesting stories from your detective days.
Well, to link the detective aspect of myself is that it was extremely important, Steve, that I be an accurate reporter, that I'm an unimpeachable witness on a stand, you know, in a court case. And so when my brother explained to me that this was this reading map, and then he designed it and developed it, and then he was teaching people to read in 2.5 hours, I couldn't just accept that my brother said that, and that was true. And so, being the detective, I brought him almost 100 people to teach to read, and I watched him teach these people to read in 2.5 hours. I drove them up to his house. He lives up in Julian, and we drove up and we drove back, and I was wanting to know how each of the students changed and transformed into readers, and watched them do so. In fact, a quick story was humorous. Was that we're riding along in the car, and this guy named James was reading all the billboards and all the street signs and everything, and then we got on the freeway and we were going, you know, 70 miles an hour. We weren't going 55 or 45 anymore. And he goes, and he got quiet. He was like looking down, and I go, James, what's going on? I lost it. I always lose it. I lost it. And I go, what do you mean? I can't read those billboards. And I looked up, and we're going 70, 75 miles an hour. I said, I can't read them either. He goes, let me slow down. So I slowed down. He goes, oh, it never occurred to him that if you were going quicker, that it would change your ability to read. So he was really excited that I slowed down and that he could continue to read all the billboards. Now, being a detective is, you know, I figured out and worked with did some murder cases. And I was able to solve and work with all the cases I worked on. I was successful at.
And you were in some high-profile cases. You mentioned a couple high-profile cases you were involved with.
Yes, yes. Well, there was the Dominelli case, which was in San Diego. That wouldn't mean that much to anyone, but it was a Ponzi scheme, and so I was very much involved in exposing the Ponzi scheme and who the players were and that type of thing. And then I had a case where I lived in France, and I worked undercover in France, and I played a certain role. So I lived in Aix-en-Provence, so I could be Craig, and then I could leave Aix-en-Provence and go to Germany and go to different parts of France and then play a different role. And I was able to discover who the person was and where they were, and help expose that to my client, who was an attorney at that time.
Another aspect I just want to weave into this has to do with a couple of near-death experiences that you've had. And from my experience with anybody who's had those kind of experiences, it brings a kind of a perspective and sensitivity and compassion for people. And how's that been for you? When did these experiences start for you, and how's that weaved into the fabric of your life?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and a part of me that is very special and dear to me. they started when I was very young. I had one when I was 4 years old. And it was a choice to come to stay in this world and to live in this world. And it started me off as, you know, a person who was looking at the world maybe a little differently than my peers, because when you had an out-of-body experience where I was 4 years old, but at the time I wasn't really, when I went out of the body, I was no longer 4 years old, so I could see things from a different perspective, which was bigger. When I was 21, I was in Hawaii, which is significant to me because it wasn't until I was 42 that I actually realized that I think that I might have drowned. Because I turtled a Hobie cat out of Diamond Head, and the two waves closed in on me, and then I was drifting down, you know, keep going deeper and deeper, and this arm reaches down and grabs me and pulls me up onto a surfboard. And I was not aware that I was drowning. I just knew that someone saved me. And then he swam over into my Hobie cat, and with his arm, he just flicked the mast up. And I just went, that was amazing. He must be incredibly strong, because usually you use ropes to do that. And then he swam back to his board. He didn't talk to me, and he just pointed at the boat. And I swam over to the boat, and I was so thankful that he had, you know, essentially, I guess, saved my life.
Were you knocked out under the
water?
water?
No, I just was way deep, and I was going into this light. It was this, it was really a peaceful experience, but I wasn't aware that I knew I was quite deep, but I couldn't understand exactly how this hand came down and pulled me up, but I wasn't, you know, you were kind of, and I pulled me up and I was out of breath. And so as I got on the Hobie cat to get it, you know, pull in the sheets and get it ready to go, I turned around. I wanted to thank the guy, this wonderful man, for having saved my life. He was a Hawaiian man. He was a young-looking, handsome guy, real robust, very quiet, and he wasn't there. Stevie wasn't there. So I went, well, I just, you know, it got to get going, and he must have been there somewhere. You know, it was kind of one of those denial things. It doesn't make sense. So I went ahead and went into the shore. Well, when I was 42 years old, I had just come out of a meditation ceremony in Encinitas, California, and I walked up, and then it was one of those street fairs, and so there was this poster on the side of this building, and it was the guy. Huh. You know, after all these years, I never forgot this guy's face. I always wanted to say thank you to him, because I really, really felt like he really saved my life. And because it was all, you know, we were in an area right off the windsock, and then there was coral, and there was waves, and it was pretty crazy. And so I went, wow, that's the guy. So I went up to the shack, and I said, who's that picture of this guy in this poster? And he said, well, oh, that's Duke Kahanamoku. I go, Duke Kahanamoku, the famous Duke Kahanamoku? And I said, yeah. And so I went home and looked up on my computer, and it didn't make sense because he would have been 88 years old at the time that I saved my life, and he was already dead. So I went, oh, that's really, really interesting. And so I realized, well, most likely that this was a mystical experience for me, and that it was different. And it wasn't, and I had most likely been saved by something that was different than it made sense to me in my logical self.
And the thing to remember is this is a very grounded guy. This is someone who's worked within the legal system, detective. So it's kind of like a little bit like that neuroscientist who had the near-death experience and could describe every aspect of it. So even though this sounds like pretty far out, I mean, it happened for you. Yeah. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it was definitely something that happened. And the meaning of it for me here while I'm in Hawaii is because I was in Honolulu, and I actually went and specifically stayed in a hotel in Honolulu, and I went to this place right offshore, or right onshore from where I had this experience, and I said a prayer and a thanks, because had that not happened and this whatever took place hadn't saved my life, then I wouldn't be here today. So, and essentially I came back to say thank you and to give back the gift. And so as I teach people on the islands in Hawaii, it's a thank you for my life and the life that I have now. It was quite a significant experience. And the other one you referred to, there's been a total of 4, but the one other one I think is significant is the one that happened just before I got involved with doing the reading method. And I was just, I was on a surgery table, and some E. coli went into my blood system and caused my heart to stop. And I was just sitting in a chair watching me on a table. And when I came back, I didn't want to be a detective anymore. It wasn't so much that it was bad being a detective. I loved helping people because I often help victims. But I felt like I needed to help more people. And I needed to figure out a way that I could contribute more to this world. And I think I was given the gift of life to come back with that message. You've got to go back. There's more you need to do. And so I immediately got involved with my brother and realized what he was doing, and then was careful and made sure that it was really what I was doing was the truth, and that was really important to me. And then I just took off, and a year ago, May, 15 months ago, I took off and around the world to teach people to read, and I'm still on my tour. Yeah,
you're on a road show here. I mean, you're most recently lived in La Jolla for a significant amount of time, but you're on a road show now. You're just moving from one place to the next, bringing this method. So, what's going to be the transition now that it's going from one-on-one to more computer-based? Is that the case?
Absolutely, and it's interesting because we teach 7 concepts. I found even when I teach it myself to someone, I become a concept. I can become a concept. The person, me, Craig, becomes a concept. They look at me, I look like something, I smell like something. And we put it on a video, and the video is so specific and so clear, but they don't have anybody to interact with. They're not talking to me, and they can't ask me questions, so therefore they don't get distracted, and they stay focused. And so we have it on the video. In fact, just yesterday, I've got to brag because I'm so excited. Someone was 16 years old, and a young girl, and she was reading at a first grade level before we taught her. And I wasn't there. This is taking place in Florida, which is ideal because I want to know, does our reading method transfer into an online program? And so it's the principal of the school, so great credibility. And he put this girl onto the video, and he tested her before, and she was at first grade level. And when he was done, she read 333 multi-syllable words. These words are multi-syllable words that are post-high school words that are used to help people get into college. They're called the GED list. So 333 words, 5 pages of words. And he's called me and just goes, "Oh my God, Craig, I'm just amazed." And at the time he called me, it was at a break I was taking where I was teaching somebody from Argentina here in Hawaii, and she was doing great. So I was just, as you can see my face, I'm getting a little red because I'm just so passionate about this.
Well, and this is one of the things where it empowers people. I mean, I think anything that empowers someone, I don't even think of this because I've always been literate, but I can think of areas in my own life where it's wonderful to be empowered, and reading and the ability to read is very empowering. So what you're doing is empowering somebody.
It's providing them a transformation of power, but also an exposing of their power. Because the students I meet, if you think about it logically, okay, I'm going to put you in this world, Steve, and you can't read. So get home. Get to the party. You've been invited to a party. How are you going to get there? And I have a very good friend that I taught, and she said what she used to do is she used to get out of the car and then go up and look at the street sign and compare it to the letters, not the word, but the letters on her page, and then go, "Oh, it's the wrong street." And then she'd have to go street by street, and then go into a restaurant and order something, and then you're looking for pictures, or you're looking to, well, what's he having? And then you do a lot of, it takes a brilliant person to survive in this world without words and without letters and without sounds that you can pronounce correctly. And so my students are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant people. They just can't read. And when I give them the gift of reading, their brilliance really shines, and they just go to the moon.
Right. So, for more, your website is?
www.method, yesyoucanreadnow.com. Yes, www.yesyoucanreadnow.com.
And that's the best way to interface with you, with this method. People can get in touch with you through the site, correct?
Well, if you, to write to me, my email address is Craig, C-R-A-I-G, .Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S, at yesyoucanreadnow. And also, I welcome you to call me on my phone.
Don't give a phone number.
No?
No.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Better go to the site, and then they can find out how to contact you through then. Yeah. So, how much longer are you going to be here on Maui? I mean, this show will air, today is Tuesday the 26th. The show will air in about a week. How much longer do you think you'll be here on Maui?
Well, right now it's really picking up, and I'm getting a lot of students and requests to teach people, Steve. And so I stay, I work for myself, and so I get to stay as long as I'm teaching students, and that there's opportunity. I try to say yes to everyone that comes to me, and yes, you can read now. So it's unlimited, it depends on, where I'm staying or the opportunities, to have a place to be. But I'm available as long as there's students to come to me and want to learn to read.
So I just want to reiterate a little bit. So what's an actual session look like with you? I mean, how does it work? What are the logistics of the session?
Well, the person obviously contacts me, and the person actually contacts me and invites me to teach their son or their daughter or themselves. And then they come to pick me up, because I'm on a bicycle and I'm on the bus. And I'll take the bus anywhere you want me to go. But if you will, pick me up. And they take me to their home, and then we sit down at a table, and then I bring my computer with me because it's so well done on the computer. And I do a little pre-test to help the person realize exactly what problems they're having with some of their reading at the time. And then I put them on the computer for about an hour. And then after 1 hour, then they'll turn off.
When you say put them on the computer for an hour, what does that mean?
I'm sorry. I teach them from the computer. So we put the program, the reading program, for them on the computer, and then they watch it on the computer.
Gotcha.
And then after an hour, I invite them to take a 15-minute walk. And that is a key thing. People I can't tell you how important it is that when you're learning something, take that 15-minute walk, because there's no pressure on them. And they just relax, and they can go have something to eat or drink or take a walk. They don't get on, a lot of them, they can't get on their computer or add any more dimensions of information.
And you actually tell people, don't get on your cell phone.
Yeah, don't talk to anybody. Just go take a walk, be peaceful. And then they come back, and then I hand them a document that shows all that I've already taught them online or on the screen, and then they learn that themselves, so they put it on their brain their way. I don't think anybody's ever asked anybody to put the information you're teaching them and let them take it their own way, but that's what we do, and it's so important that they do that. And then after they've done that for 15 minutes, then they go back onto the computer program, and they watch the exceptional sounds, and they learn the exceptional sounds. And
what's that mean, exceptional sounds?
Exceptional sounds are like ones that don't follow our rules. We have the 7 concepts, and so like ED, ED is an exceptional sound. It doesn't follow a rule. ING, OUS, IOUS, and so that when you see them in a word, you just say them, in that little space. And so they learn those exceptional sounds, and then as soon as they're done with that, I immediately just pull out this list of words. And they have a list, and I have them. We just follow along, and they just go and say the words. And it's like they're not like stuttering and sputtering. They're not breaking them down. They just say them. The first word is evergreen, and they just go, evergreen, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a long word. And then they keep on going, and pretty soon I'm actually telling them, a little faster, please. A little louder, please. And then they finish 333 words, and they're very, 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 very pleased with themselves.
And you guarantee this, correct? This is something that, as I recall, you guarantee if it doesn't work during the first session. You allow someone to come back for a second session. What's the progression of that? Because you guarantee this. This is 100%.
Yeah, well, I love guaranteeing it because I've taught over 1,000 people in the last 15 months. So, yes, anyone that comes to me that has any challenges with it or difficulties with it, or I'd be happy to work with them longer. So far, we haven't had to do that. I mean, it's just it's so miraculous. But I'd be happy to. In fact, I do. I have one student that I'm working with, a little bit longer to make sure that he, is able to utilize it to the best that he would like to in the school. But I'm interested in reaching everybody. I'm into it because I want to change the world. I want to teach the world to read. And so if you come to me and you want to learn to read, I want to teach you and I want to spend time with you. And so I'm not really interested in thinking about oh, gee, there's something wrong with you, or it's your fault, or whatever. It's really, really, really focus on receiving that student and helping them to become a reader. Do you mind if I tell one quick story?
I hope you do.
Okay, well, there's this young man in Palo Alto, California, and he's 6'5", and he's 6'5", and he's 16 years old. And his mother has brought him and heard about us through the corner grocery store guy. I got to know this guy, and he was introducing me to people. She was a local barber. So he comes to me, and now his mom's away, and we're in a park, actually. I had him sit at a park bench and at a table, and he's got the computer all set up and ready to go. And he said, well, Mr. Collins, well, Mr. Collins, there's something wrong with my brain. And I said, oh, there is. He goes, yeah. He says, I'm really slow, and I'm not very smart. And I said, oh. I said, well, I think you're going to enjoy what I've got because my brother thought he was retarded until he was 30 years old. And I said, and he's the one that developed this for you, so maybe he'll have something in this that can speak to you. And he said, okay. And then he sat down, and I did a pretest with him, and he definitely had difficulty with reading words, and he was really slow in regards to his being able to recognize words, and he had a very small vocabulary. So I put him on the computer, and we turned on the program, the Universal Reading Method, and he worked with it, and he went really fast. And he just went right through it, and within 2 hours and 1 minute, I actually timed it, 2 hours and 1 minute, he completed reading all the 333 words. And he looks at me and he's like, squints his eyes and he goes, there's nothing wrong with my brain? I said, no. There was never anything wrong with my brain? I said, never, ever anything wrong with your brain. I'm not stupid and dumb? I go, no. He goes, let's go find my mom. So he runs off, and we go to the barber shop, and she's just finished clipping this person, and she said, well, how'd it go? And he says, Mom, I can read all these words. And he intentionally hands her the page that's got the hardest words on it. And he says, can you read these words? And she looks at him, and she goes, some of them, but she didn't read any words. He says, well, I can read all of them. And he grabs the sheet back, and he reads all the words from the list for her. And she's just eyes huge and huge. And so she said, come on. And she takes him over to the corner grocery guy. And she walks in and she says, can you read these words? And he looks at her and goes, most of them, some of them. And she says, pulls the sheet away and she says, my son can read all of them.
And tell me, just to clarify, so what is, I mean, because obviously there are thousands and thousands of words.
Correct.
Many, many thousands of words. So what is this about the 333? What is it about that particular sheet of paper and learning those words? Why is that important? Why is that significant?
Well, I think I mentioned before that these are words from the GED, which is a graduate exam that people have to have passed before they can enter college. Mm-hmm. And so this is the whole list that they require. Okay. So there's significant words in that because they notice someone that now you're past high school and you can enter college. Uh-huh. So that's a very, very important.
And it's also foundational, I would imagine, that if you know those words, there's probably many other words that you can build off of those.
Oh, well, besides, before they read, they only had about, 40 different words they had to read from, and they couldn't read those words. And those words weren't as hard as the words that are in this big list. We start off with multi-syllable words, and we never stop having them read multi-syllable words. When you read, you never have to read multi-syllable word after multi-syllable word after multi-syllable word. And so at the end, then they bring me their book, and they read from their book, and they tell me the story, and they're just so elated because it's as easy. It's easy, and it's easy to read from a book. Then you only have one multi-syllable word coming up the pike when you've just read from a list of 333 multi-syllable words.
Well, you know what I have to say? Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That's wonderful. That's a great one for us, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Craig. And this is a culmination of 2 years of being in touch.
Yes, and
Facebook. You know, people slam Facebook sometimes. I enjoy it so much, and I've really enjoyed meeting you through Facebook.
And now we have many, many more years to enjoy, and no matter where I am in the world.
That's right.
You can just plug in and say, Craig, what are you doing? And I'll go and I'll pull up the video of this, the YouTube video of this whole presentation.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this episode of Life on Maui. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until next time, aloha.
Call me crazy, but I'm never